God-sized story.
Hello and welcome to another episode of God-Sized Stories. This week, I have Daniel on. Daniel, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Craig, thanks for having me today. Appreciate it. My name is Daniel Mueller. I'm 28 years old, from Elmwood Park. I work in IT right now. I've been doing that for a few years, and I love it. Play hockey when I could, when things are open. Play soccer as well when those things are open. Love getting together with friends, watching movies, or going to some church event. I've been getting into volunteering more. It's been a lot of fun. And I really like Star Wars, and I love building things, whether it's out of paper, cardboard, a little bit of wood projects here and there, and I'll try to put some sort of technology into my projects, but they're very minimal. But I like to tinker around with things, just like my dad. He's always building something and creating something.
Very nice. Well, Daniel, I'm so glad that you're able to join me here on the Daniel podcast. I was joking with you earlier. You're now somehow the fourth Daniel I've had.
Yes.
Without even trying, it's happening. So thank you for that.
Oh, no problem.
In all seriousness and reality, you have a really hard and strong story for us today about how you really had to make some big changes in your life and you really had to make some big movements in your life. I'm just going to let you just take off with that.
Sure. No, thank you so much. Thanks for this platform that you have for people to share really how God has helped and changed things. I know personally in my life. So it was probably a little over a year ago that I went through a divorce, and it was really hard. It's never easy to go through a divorce. I can't imagine. But it was something I was never expecting. I was married for a year and a half, and we were, especially myself, mechanical Christians, kind of going through the motions, really checking off the boxes, going to church on Christmas and Easter, and trying to say that we were following in what God's desire was for married life. But I learned quickly in healing from the divorce that I was not following God's direction for proper marital life, proper intimacy. And that's what really made me see how the marriage didn't have God in it. And what was so hard is that when we were getting married and planning the wedding, we talked about having us two and God in the middle, and that really just did not turn out to be the case. And I was guilty by all accounts too, because I wasn't practicing the faith. And so the marriage falls apart. Just differences in intimacy and agreements with things. And so we broke apart, and I was getting so lost because I was confused as to why is this happening? Why is she saying that she just doesn't love me anymore, and it's not working out, and I'm just lost. So I didn't know what to do. Luckily, I have my best man. His name is Jake, and he works for ministry in Canada, actually, and he was just superb in helping me seek out the Lord during this. And I'll tell you, it was not easy because I'm like struggling with hearing all these things that my wife was doing and that she was doing to me, and it was falling apart. And I'm like, Jake, but this is what happened. And he just kept pressing and encouraging me to seek God and get into the Word. And at the time, it was frustrating because I didn't realize, is this really going to help? And luckily, though, it really did. And because of that, because of his consistency to just want me to know the truth of God's love, what I looked at our marriage was that my marriage was God, and I was looking up at that, and that's what I was living for. And then it all comes crashing down, and now everything you believed in, it's like the golden calf. It's like everything you believe in just breaks down, and now you're left stranded and hopeless. So the marriage falls apart. I we try to do some counseling. We went to 3 different counselors, the last one being a Christian counselor, because I really wanted to try to get God's truth into this marriage and see if we can save it, because I wanted to save it so bad. And we show up to this counselor, and this was when divorce was right on the table. We weren't sure. I know I didn't want to go through a divorce, but I also knew if that's what's going to happen, it has to happen. I can't just wait around and expect her to love me again. So we go to this last counselor, and the counselor asked my wife, why are you here today? Or what is the reasoning? I know a little bit about what happened or what's going on in your marriage, but why are you here? And my wife had said that she really didn't know. She said, I'm just here because Daniel asked me to be here. And really that was kind of just a sign, eye opener that she doesn't love me anymore. And that's the sheer fact of it. She doesn't love me. And I can't pray that she will love me. I can't force her to love me. I can't keep living my life pretending she's going to love me. So I have to let her go. And that was the hardest thing, Craig. That was the hardest thing, to have to be the one to go to a lawyer, to start the process and serve the papers and just say, okay, listen, I realize you don't love me anymore. And there was just so much confusion going on. It wasn't a lot of hatred, but there was a lot of confusion because we had kind of split up for about 2 months, where she moved away and then I stayed in an apartment and was kind of waiting. I was kind of working on myself. I was getting into daily devotional, really trying to learn more about Jesus and God. And I know all like the typical things you might learn in school, but I didn't fully realize what a relationship with Jesus Christ looks like. And that was just opening my eyes every day. But on top of that, I was trying to learn what it's like to be a good Christian husband and love someone that is on the fence about the marriage and moves back home. And now I'm stuck here working on myself, trying to pray about our relationship, see what happens, all the while having no idea what my wife was doing. And those 2 months went by where we weren't in communication. And that's, so then I found out about an affair, and it was like, oh gosh, this is so heavy. This is just really, really heavy. I don't know how to handle this. But I had approached her about it, and with everything I was learning about God and forgiveness, there was just this instant, and it was still a learning process for me, because instantly I wanted to forgive her and say, it's okay. Let's keep working on the marriage. But that's when we went to the counselor. We started going to counselors, and for a couple, like maybe a week or two, we went, and that's when I realized, okay, she moved out, she had an affair, she really doesn't love me anymore, and I can't force that. So I have to accept this. And so the divorce, knock on wood, went as easy as it could have been. It was she was very cordial about it. So I was praising God for that. We don't have any kids. We didn't have a house or a mortgage. It could have been a lot worse. When I look back at it during the time, it was the worst. Every day was the hardest. I did not want to wake up. I did not want to go to work. Why should I? It felt like there was no point anymore. Because we were together for 5 years, and now all of a sudden it's over. And now I have to, I just remember thinking, how am I supposed to get to know someone again or go on a first date? Those are the worst.
Right.
Those are the worst. So just, things like that, where they were so real. It's such a real thing to think about, and also scary because it's happening, because it's the fact of the matter is this is going to be a divorce and it's going to end, and there's no going back. So the divorce paperwork back and forth with lawyers probably took about 6 to 8 months. And in that time was when I just knew I earnestly had to seek God. And because of encouragement from Jake, And then the chapel, the church I'm attending now, where I met a friend who connected me with you, Craig. So it's so cool how
Good
that
old DJ.
DJ coming out, and the chapel just being such a blessing in my life and in my journey, because in the 6 to 8 months of dealing with the paperwork and emails, every day was so hard, and I didn't want to tell anybody about it. Finally, I told my parents about it, and this is probably maybe a month or two after my wife had moved out. So we weren't finally first like in the divorce, but she moved out, and I told my folks, and that was just the worst, because you come back home and you're like admitting that you failed and you need help. But the amount of love that I received from them, from my siblings, from family, friends, and the acceptance was God just moving in such a way that I didn't expect him to move. I thought there would be a lot more things said, but there was just love and hugs and help. And it's kind of a blur. It was a blur back then, but the times that my siblings came and helped me physically carry my items out of my apartment to move back home and moving these things, I forget that they even did that, because it was such a blur. I didn't even remember it was happening during the time.
Well, that is trauma. Like, you're experiencing trauma, and it's easy for your brain to want to block that out.
No, so true. So I moved back home and still have to deal with the lawyers and back and forth. But that's when Jake was encouraging me to press into church community, press into the word. And then I reached out to the pastor that married us, and he and I would meet weekly. So Pastor Mike and I would meet weekly. Jake and I would meet weekly, but text daily. And then I started going to the young adults group at the chapel. Then I started going to church regularly on Sundays. This is all before COVID, by the way. So it was all open. And those moments just getting connected, sharing my story a little bit with some of the mentors and young adult pastors was very hard, but also the best thing that I could have done, and the best guidance that I got from Jake and Pastor Mike, to surround yourself with Christian people and fill your cup up with the Spirit and not with the earthly things. Because I wanted the earthly things. I wanted the wife and the house and the dog and the kids, and it was like that was my level of achievement, and this is what success is. If I don't get there, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy if I don't get married, and then I do get married, and I was so happy. I thought I was happy, but then everything comes crashing down, and you really realize who is your God in life, and who are you worshiping. So that's a little bit about kind of what had happened and the journey that I have embarked on, and now fully devoting my life to living it for Christ, even though it's not always easy, and the temptations are real
every day.
But that's kind of the gist of it. There's definitely more details, but yeah.
So like that, obviously, as you just said, like there's so much more, it's so much deep. This is a thing that at the same time too, like every story is going to go on while you're still alive. Like it's going to continue. But I'm sure you've picked up some really good practical advice or tips or books or any other types of things like that really could help our listeners, I feel like, because it is a unique situation you've gone through. But on the other hand, a lot of people go through very similar things. So what could you share with our audience that they could really benefit from?
Oh, definitely. Well, it's sad how common it is that divorce is so real and out there. But luckily, I have had some amazing guidance and tools to help me navigate it. The therapist that I mentioned earlier, her name is Amy, and she's from Hopeful Therapy. And she was recommended to me by Stephen at the Young Adults from the chapel. So she's someone that's kind of local here and she just guided me so much to realize um, the love that God has for me, and even for my ex-wife, that there might be disappointment and unhappiness, but that there's still love there, and that I don't have to carry anger towards my ex-wife. I don't have to let that be a poison in my life. So um, right off the bat, going to see, if you're going through a situation like this, or even anything that's traumatic, therapy is amazing. And if
Totally agree.
and
I
if
had a
you're
friend on a couple months ago who is a Christian therapist, just so we could talk about that, like break that stigma.
oh,
Therapy is huge. All people should do it. Anybody can gain from it, no matter
so
what
good,
situation.
so good. And the fact that she is a Christian therapist, that is her background,
Mhm.
in the healing of whatever process you're in, was so helpful, because I was still so new and learning all about God and Jesus, and
Mhm.
what is even happening in this world. And so she was amazing, and she recommended a book called Love Must Be Tough, and it's by Dr. James Dobson.
Mm.
If you're going through it's really for people going through problems in like relationship, marriage, divorce, um, infidelity, something like that. Highly recommend this book, because it changed my life. It helped me, and there's pieces of Christian theology in the book as well. So it really guided me to recognize like my shortcomings, and the areas that I was not serving my wife well, but also making me realize the red flags that I had seen early on in the relationship, but did not want to act on, and chose to ignore, chose to avoid. Um, but that book, I just couldn't put it down. It was
Mm.
so helpful. It filled with such practical advice, just learning how to respect yourself again.
Mm.
Um, and so to kind of go into that, really talking about some of the shortcomings, one thing I had struggled with was pornography, and that was a big problem for myself in our marriage, because the intimacy was gone. Now we had been married a year, and right from the bat there was something. We were disconnected in intimacy, but I was too afraid to press into why there was no intimacy. So instead I filled that cup up with pornography, and the cheap substitute that it is for real intimacy. um, and that just it causes so much, you know, issues in your mind, in your thoughts, in your brain, and your cognitive thinking, that I was using it as a drug, basically, to suppress the actual feelings I was having with my wife, and why this was happening. And even after the divorce, I was just more frustrated that I'll never be intimate again with her. What happened? So, and pornography was right there, so I would go right back to it. And to get off of pornography was definitely not easy, but I will say being off of it is the best thing
Mm.
ever, because of how destructive it is, and not just from a biblical like viewpoint, but from like a different a viewpoint of um, how your brain works, and how you develop connections to like a screen, even, or how your sexual desires can become morphed and corrupted by using pornography. And even if it goes further into like prostitution or something like that, it is just wiping away everything that God promises in
Yes.
real intimacy that he's designed and he's created for us. Which, granted, I really didn't care to know about that prior. I
Mm.
just figured, it's okay. Everyone does. Everyone looks at pornography. That's fine, right? Well, some awesome podcasts I can recommend that helped me get off of that quite quickly was The Naked Gospel.
Mm.
It talks about sex trafficking and the harmful effects of pornography. It talks about amazing testimonies that people share into their journey through maybe being trafficked, or their journey as someone who was seeking out like prostitution and purchasing people, purchasing women, children. It is crazy how real of a drug it is and real of an issue it is in this world, and yet you don't see that on the news. But the Naked Gospel really gave me such a different viewpoint of like never wanting to go back to that drug ever in my life. And then on top of that, another one that helped me to kind of see what Christian dating should look like, or even like Christian marriages should look like, because I was in a marriage and I really didn't know how to live it out as a Christian marriage should look like. So the podcast I would listen to is called The Heart of Dating. And the host, she just brings on awesome speakers, scientists, pastors, different couples, individuals, and ask them about their story. Ask them what they know, what they do for a living about dating and pornography, and how far is too far, and all these different things that I really want to know, and I need to know, because I want to do this the right way. When the time comes, I'm not in any rush right now, but when the time comes, I would love to have a marriage that honors God, and honor my body for God, and honor my wife's body for God, because it talks about the Holy Spirit being in us, and sexual immorality is a sin that doesn't just affect other people, but it affects ourselves internally, and the Holy Spirit in us, and those things that I was doing prior, and wanting now to not go back to those old ways. It's just really opened my eyes to want to have a healthy relationship, a healthy, intimate relationship in the future. So right away, I mean, hookup culture is not something that I ever want to get into. I have dabbled in that before in college days, and even wanting to dabble in it after the divorce because of hurt and pain, and wanting to fill up that void. But yeah, to get that fixed, but realizing how it's such a cheap imitation for what's really out there, caused me not to want to do that. That doesn't mean to say that temptation isn't still there. And we talked for a moment about how it is a daily thing, to pick up our cross and carry it, and to die to ourselves and what the fleshly desire wants, and to kind of feed that need that we have. But so I do have to talk to God daily about pushing temptation away. And with me, with the pornography, it's been things where I have to be careful. I have to be mindful of what I look at, whether it's a video game or it's a movie I want to watch. If it's a magazine that I maybe want to look at, but if I know there might be something in there that could cause me to want to go down a path that I've gone down before, that I don't want to anymore, I have to be mindful of that. And it's really a choice. It's choosing to live for God, and honor Him, because without Him, without the people of the church, like the chapel, but without the love that God's given those people, and the love that those people have shown me, it's really become easy to say there is a God. This is real, that there is love out there in the world, that is so much better than a cheap hookup, or swiping right on Tinder, or trying to find some quick fix, and getting pornography to solve your problems. And so I've been really grateful that God has had grace in my life, because of the areas that I've messed up, and the problems and shortcomings that I've had. But it's been such a journey, and it's not over. It's definitely not over yet.
Well, Daniel, I'm so blessed, and I know the audience is so blessed as well, to hear you, at least at this stage in your story, be so willing and open to share that. Like I can hear, like you were talking about how all those people are around you and stuff like that, but also at the same time, you're kind of doing that as well for other people, whether you know it or not, just by loving God the way that you do. Is obviously, as you're coming through the screen right now, loving God is like the Lord uses that. Maybe you'll know a person like that someday that you can do that for. Maybe not. Like someone might hear this somewhere and it's like, because as you said, it is sadly a common thing.
So common, yeah.
Even in the church, like even
Yeah.
among like in churches where there's people that are great, God-fearing, loving, growing Christians, it still
Yes.
happens.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. I've heard a lot of those stories like that.
Yeah. And so to have someone like you that is so willing to share that is it's encouraging to me. It's reasons like that why I do this is like because honestly the best way to really ask for help is first be like prompted to like
Mhm.
someone might be sitting and thinking of some of these things like man it kind of sounds like a situation I'm in, maybe I should say something like no, but then they hear oh somebody else went through that and it
Yeah.
makes them like oh yeah I should really talk about that
Yes, I
before.
can get healing. Oh shoot, this is crazy.
So thank you so much for just being willing and open and for sharing all of this. Obviously, I'll be praying as you continue to heal because, as you said, God shows so much grace, and we're so blessed that He's so graceful.
Amen. Oh gosh, amen.
And it's because it brings Him so much joy to give us that grace, and then to see us on the opposite side of that grace grow, and then do the things you're doing. Like He's up there and He's celebrating, and He's happy. He's like, look at Him go! Like, yeah.
Oh, let's go. Go.
So, Daniel, thank you for all of that. And for the audience, all those things that Daniel shared, they'll be down in the description on wherever this is, just so you can, if one of those things sounded interesting to you, because I know a couple of them did for me. Like I listened to too many podcasts. That's why I wanted to start one.
Yes.
So another one to listen to, I will happily take.
Add it to the list. Add it to the list.
Definitely will. So audience, don't worry. All those suggestions will be in there. You don't need to scrub back and find where he said it because I'll definitely provide you with great tangible tools to grow. And audience, as always, thank you so much for listening. I couldn't do this without you. Goodbye.